So on section 6, which starts on page 41, again, all we're going to be talking about is the inequality stuff today. So it's very similar to solving an equation. We're just adding in that little bit of a wrinkle. The first thing that we got to do, just to remind you, is how to graph these things, because they are going to ask you to graph them on a number line. It's going to have something like x is greater than 2, and it's going to ask you to graph it. Okay? So in this book and in this course, how they graph them is you've got this number line. Now for me personally, I don't want you to make number lines that are ginormous. You don't need to make, these long, elaborate number lines for one problem every time. Here's all I want to see. All I want to see is whatever the number that you got for your answer, put that one in the middle. Then give me one number higher than 2. 3, good job. And one number lower than 2 is 1. You don't need to waste your time making these big, long, going out to whatever, because we're going to have some of these ones that, what if we would have got an answer of 1,000? Are you going to want to write every number from 0 to 1,000? No, and I don't want you to waste your time doing that. So the number that we have for the solution, put that in the middle, then one number higher, one number lower. Don't need to waste your time doing too much more than that. Now, for this book, when you have greater than or less than, you are going to use an open circle, which I think most of you have in the past. If you've got greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, then you're going to use a closed circle. For those of you with aspirations of going on to college, the 102 book that we use, which is a prerequisite for the college algebra, so if you don't get high enough to get into college algebra, you have to take 102. That textbook uses a series of parentheses or brackets. And I'm going to show you that, because this book never talks about those. But when you get up to college algebra, which some of you juniors want to take next year, that's all they use. They still use the open and closed circle on the number line, but as far as a different type of notating it. So for this particular thing, we're going to use an open circle. Which way does the shade on the number line? Does it go to the right or to the left? How do you know it goes to the right? Because the number is bigger than 2? Okay, that's what that says, right? X is greater than 2. Now, don't fall into this trap. The trap always that I've heard is, well, it's pointing to the right, so I got a shade to the right. And in that voice, too. So, but what if I were to write it like that? That's the same thing. It's just pointing in a different direction because I put the 2 on the other side. That's saying 2 is less than whatever x is. So therefore, I'm still going to go to the right. So, do you guys know who Pac-Man is? Okay. This summer I had the pleasure of going to Pixels, and Pac-Man was one of the bad guys. Okay. If Pac-Man is going to eat the letter, right? Then you shade to the right. If Pac-Man is going to eat the number, you shade to the left. That's how it works. Which I know you guys have known that before. Some of your other teachers may have used alligator, right? They usually use the alligator thing, but I like Pac-Man better than alligator. So, how are you guys for graphing? Do you guys remember doing that? Okay. Now again, I'm going to show you something now that your book doesn't talk about, but when you get to college, you're going to have to know it. I know I had one person in here yesterday, one of the seniors that's taking college algebra. He goes, I've never seen any of this stuff. What is this? And it was their first assignment. And it was the stuff I'm going to show you, because I do that for my students, because I teach it, so I know it. The other type of notation for this stuff is called interval notation. Interval notation is a series of either brackets or parentheses. Bracket meaning equal to, parentheses meaning not equal to. And the way that we write it out, or the way that this one would be written out, was we'd start with the number 2, because the 2 is the furthest to the left that anything deals with. And I'd have a parenthesis on there because it was not equal to. And which way does it go? It goes all the way to the right forever, right? What symbol in math do we use that means forever? Infinity. And an infinity symbol is always going to be a parenthesis because of the fact that you can never equal infinity. Because if you can, then you've just attached a value to infinity, and infinity isn't the number. Infinity is a concept. Okay? That there is called interval notation. You will see me write that from time to time just to show it to you, just to expose it to you. Your book does not talk about it ever. But I'm going to show it to you because I know what's coming for you in your futures if you go on to take college algebra and or intermediate algebra in college. That's all they use. They don't use this anymore. They write it like this. Okay? So just so that you are aware of it, that's what they use. The one author, and you don't have to write this necessarily because I don't agree with them, but the one author for the 102 book, he writes his number line like that. He would not use an open circle. He would use the parenthesis right on the number line. Okay, so just so that you are aware of it, that's how they do it in 102. And me, when I was teaching 102, I took either way, whether you used a parenthesis or an open circle. Okay? So, as far as some problems go, what would I do in this situation? What would I have to do first? Okay, get x's on one side, numbers on the other. Alyssa, because you spoke up, which side do you want to move your x's to?
Subtract.
Okay, so Alyssa said subtract 5. So Alyssa, since I'm moving my x's to the right, then I got to move my numbers to the left. To the left. So when I do that, when I go straight down now, what happens with the 5x's? Yep, they cancel out. What's 2 plus 4? 6. Good job. This symbol doesn't change. We're going to talk about that in a second, the rule for that, because you may have forgotten. What's 7x minus 5x? 2x. And what happens with the 4's? They cancel. Good. Now what? Divide by 2. Now, just because it's been a while since you guys have done inequalities, the rule for inequalities is if you ever multiply or divide by a negative number, you must switch what sign? The inequality. Okay? Now, you guys said sign because that's probably how you had it. I usually used to say sign, but then I had some college people that got confused by that because they didn't remember if I was meaning the plus or the minus sign or the inequality sign. So I changed my thought or changed my way of saying it. I refer to it as an inequality symbol rather than sign, just so that you guys know. So if I say symbol, that's what I'm talking about as the inequality part. By the way, what is 6 divided by 3? Or 2? 3. And I don't change it, you said, because I'm not multiplying or dividing by a negative. And I'm done. Great job. Hey, that's not any different than what we did 2 days ago, is it? Okay, now the other added part, you have to graph that. So what number do I have to put on the number line? 3. What's one number higher? 4. What's one number lower? 2. Open or close circle? Closed. How did you know it was closed? Because it's equal to. Awesome. Which way do I shade? Huh? To the left? Why? It's pointing to the number? Or is it pointing to the letter? Pointing to the letter. It's going to eat the number, right? Womp, 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 womp. You can think of Pac-Man eating it. Okay, good job. Now, that is done. But just so that you are exposed to this again, with interval notation, the furthest left that it goes is where? It's going forever to the left, isn't it? That's considered negative infinity. That's how I draw my infinity symbols, by the way, as a sideways 8. I can't do this on there because it looks really bad. So just so you know, that's how I make my 8s. What number does it come right up to and stop at? The 3. And then because the 3 was included, you'll see a bracket on it. Okay? Now, this, like I mentioned, is stuff that we see now. That's how it's written when you get to your college level classes. That's what they do. That's how they write it. You have to be responsible enough to realize that sometimes it might be interval notation because you might have parentheses on both sides and not a mixed number. Or a ordered pair. Not a mixed number, an ordered pair, like a graphing point. Okay, so you got to be careful with that. What do you think? Is that too bad? What do you think of that? Now, you don't have to write the interval notation unless you want to. I'm just exposing it to you, so I'm going to give that to you every time, but you're not responsible for writing that. If you do, great. I'll let you know. I won't mark it. I won't count it against you if you write it wrong. I'm just making sure that you've seen it. Okay? Because I want to make sure that you know that. Then, the last thing that you guys are going to see is stuff like this. What if you have two inequality symbols for the price of one? That's known as a compound inequality, like a compound word, like my last name. Okay? Sydney, how do I start this? Add 4? Okay, not quite. Good guess, though. Okay, I don't want to do anything with the left or the right side. I want to work with the middle. I want to get the middle because that's where my x is. I want to get x all by itself. Okay? So in this particular problem, we're going to add 10 first. Now, there are 3 sides to this inequality, not just 2. There is a left side, a middle, and a right side. So you have 3 sides to deal with. Your job is to get x all by itself in the middle. Okay? So that's what you're trying to do. So then on the left-hand side, what's negative 4 plus 10? 6. Do I flip the symbol? No. 6x. What's 14 plus 10? 24. Now how do I solve for x? Divide by 6. Am I multiplying or dividing by a negative? No. So what does that mean for my symbols? They stay the same. And I didn't ask you, but I got 1 and 4. Okay? Great job. Now graphing that. And I kind of left myself no room to graph it, so I'm going to write the answer on another slide. I'm going to have 0, 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 5. I guess I got to have 0 to 5. And the reason why I did all that is because I have not only one number this time, I actually have how many numbers to account for? 2. Because I got 2 answers, right? So the 1. Is the 1 a open circle or closed circle? Open. Is the 4 an open circle or closed circle? Closed. Now, something else that I want to point out to you guys, because I've seen it too many times before. I'm doing those circles that big for a reason. Okay? I over-exaggerate my circles so that you know that you can see them. In the past, I've literally seen people do this. Here's the circle, here's the 1, and then they go like this. I did put a dot on that 1. I was physically touching the iPad and making a dot there. Can you see it? No. So you want to make sure that you over-exaggerate that so that way the reader, in this case me, knows where it's supposed to go, or where it's supposed to be at. Also, take a look at how I've been shading. I just use a squiggle line. Okay? Because a lot of times I've seen this in the past too, where it was supposed to be at 1 and they do this and then they do that. I put a thing on that line, but it's really hard to tell. Okay? So make sure you over-exaggerate it just because it's easier to read. So now, which way do I shade from the 1? To the right. Which way do I shade from the 4? So then if I'm going to shade to the right here and to the left there, then it's just everything in the middle, isn't it? Good. Now, just so that you understand what interval notation is, the furthest left point is the number 1. That was not included, so I'd use a parenthesis. And what's the furthest right point? 4. I do not put the numbers that are in between 1 and 4. How many numbers are in between 1 and 4? No. A lot of decimals, right? Like too many to count. That's why you do, it's like where you start to where you stop. It's not you don't want to put everything in between there because you'll be there doing that for the rest of your life. Trust me, you want to have a life. Right? So that's what an interval notation for that one would look like. So in college, just so that you guys are aware of it, this is what you get, but this is what you'd write. This book, and for this class, in all intents and purposes, either way is fine by me. I don't care which way you have it, because I know both of them. But like I said, I actually had one of the seniors who's taking college algebra. They're responsible for doing this, and he goes, I've never seen that before. He didn't have me last year, he had somebody else. So because I do teach it, I'm going to show it to you. What if it had the word or in between them? What if you had two equations where you had the word or? What if you had that? Tyler, what do? Do you think? Work with one side first. Good. Good advice. I like it. So which side do you want to do first? Okay. So you're going to do the left? So if I'm listening to Tyler right, I subtracted 5. Ooh, Tyler, I subtracted by a negative. Or subtracted, I have a negative there. Do I flip my symbol? Huh? I didn't hear. No. When do I flip it? Or? Right. So either multiplying or dividing by a negative. Good. Okay. Brad, how do I finish that? And what is 6 divided by 3? 2. Cameron, how do I start the right side? I want to add 7. I do want to add 7. What is 23 plus 7? 30. Jaylee, now what? Good. What do you get? 6 is correct. I just didn't write the Is that okay? Okay. So with the word or. Now typically what happened was the last problem where we only had 2 symbols and it was only done like that. Notice how the shading went in between the 2 dots? With or, typically it's not going to go in between, it's going to go on the outside edges of it. Okay? So again, if I put the 2 on there, and the 6 on there, 7 and 5, 3 and 1, open or closed on the 2? Rebecca, what do you think? No, Rebecca, never mind. That's next hour. Which I don't know, right? No. That was a good guess, though. Rachel, see, I had the R. Okay, Rachel, what? Close. Thank you. Sorry, Rachel. I'll get it. Eventually. What about the 6? Open or closed? Good. Julia, which way do I shade from the 2? To the left. To the left? And Michael, which way do I shade from the 6? All right, good. Now let me ask you this one more question. When was the first time you guys did this stuff? Long time ago. like probably 7th or 8th grade maybe. Okay, it's been a while since you've done it though, hasn't it? Geometry, we didn't really do this stuff, did you? No. So that's why I'm just revisiting it. Now, just so that you guys are aware of it, that's as much as you guys have to do on a problem like that. You guys are done. However, if you want to see what the interval notation looks like, this is what this one would be. The very furthest left it goes on to negative infinity because it's going all the way to the left. So negative infinity would have been that side of it. What side did it come up to and stop at first? It stopped at the 2. The 2 was a closed circle, is what Rachel said. So that would have been a bracket. Then I have a space in the line. I have a gap. That gap gets closed by a big giant U. The U stands for union, is the official name for it. It also is the symbol for the word or. If you haven't figured it out, mathematicians don't like to write. So therefore we use symbols for just about everything. That symbol, the U, is union, which union means or. Okay? I had a student in my college class like 3 years ago finally figured out that union, she equated it to getting married, which may or may not be for you in the future. Okay? But she equated it to when she got married, then you have his stuff and my stuff, and you bring it all together, and all of a sudden you've got all this, you've got more stuff to deal with. And that's exactly what's happening. We have the left side, the right side, now we're bringing them together to work together. Does that make sense? Okay. What was the other number that we had? 6? Was that open or close? So bracket 6. And where did it go? And beyond. So therefore it's a parenthesis on the infinities. That's what the interval notation would look like for that problem. Okay? You are not responsible for writing the interval notation. I just want to expose it to you so that you've seen it, so that you know what it looks like. For the most part, if you look on page 45 and 44, the first couple are just going to say graph it. From like 4 to 20, it just says graph the inequality. Then on 22 to 32, it says solve the inequality, then graph it. So you actually have to do some algebra to solve it. Same thing with the ones down below. Like on 40 to the rest of them, 40 to 50, they're all 40 to 48. That's where you've got the compound ones. So very similar to all the ones we did today. Okay? So here's what I got for you. On page 44 to 45. 4 to 32. Multiples of 4. We talked about that a couple days ago. So Trail, I know it's been a couple days, but are you okay with multiples of 4? And then 38 to 48 evens.